So obviously we're here today to help you build a neurology practice. I'm going to be covering a lot of material today, and I'm going to be moving through it relatively fast. And obviously as well, I've got an accent. You can tell I'm an Australian. So if any of you are having any difficulty here understanding my terms or things like that, I am going to be making a recording of the material today available, and the slides will also be available. So if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you a link where you can download a copy of the webinar today and also the slides, as I said, so that you can refer back to them. I'm also going to tell you where you're going to be able to get help implementing the things that we're going to talk about today. So if I forget that, be sure to remind me as well. We're going to talk about the challenges that are facing you in practice today. We're going to talk about specifically how I went about building my functional neurology practice, giving you the steps that were involved in terms of the marketing and so forth. And then we're going to talk about, as I said, about how to go about getting help addressing the challenges that you're facing in your marketing today. A little bit about me. I started learning functional neurology back in 1999, so I've been doing it for quite a while. I sat my DAC&B exams in Texas, so I came over to the States to do those. I'm an AC&B Associate Examiner, as well as being a Carrick Institute Assistant Professor. I'm also a sessional lecturer at RMIT University in Australia. I've contributed to the textbook Functional Neurology for Practitioners of Manual Medicine. And I've also built a successful functional neurology practice using the techniques that I'm going to describe to you today. Now, obviously, the material that I'm presenting today is not affiliated with or endorsed by any of the groups that I mentioned earlier. And I don't say these things to boast, but just to show you that I'm really familiar with functional neurology and its challenges, so that you know that, I'm not just talking nonsense. I'm somebody who's been around the traps, and I understand what's going on for you in your practice. Our markets today, we really have lots of challenges that weren't around 10 years ago, for example. One of the big things is that there has obviously been considerable decline in household disposable income. Obviously, since 2008, when the GFC hit, it hit you guys in the States more than what it hit us here in Australia, but even so, we've really noticed the pinch. And so as a consequence, it's become harder to market ourselves and get patients into practice and so on, because people have less money available to spend on services such as ours. And the other thing is that there really is increasing competition within the market, even within the functional neurology space, the increasing awareness of things like concussion and TBI. I know with vestibular rehabilitation, 3 or 4 years ago, there was nobody advertising for vestibular rehabilitation down here in Melbourne, whereas now every second physiotherapist or physical therapist is advertising for it and so forth. And so you've got, regular chiropractors starting to talk more and more about doing the types of things we do, even though they're not necessarily qualified to do it, if I can dare say that. You have things like physical therapists, you have your traditional Chinese medicine practitioners, there's general physicians, neurologists, neurosurgeons, etc. And they're all starting to get more savvy with their marketing. And so you're facing a lot more competition than perhaps you ever have before. Now, I know we offer a very unique perspective on most of these things, but to a patient, they really don't necessarily understand the difference between a regular chiropractor and a neurosurgeon and so forth when it comes to treating a lot of these neurological conditions. And so it's our job to educate them so that they understand the differentiating factors that make us unique and give us the opportunity to offer them in that, help them in that unique way. The other aspect is that your patients have increasing aspects to practitioner reviews, and good or bad, they have access to those, basically. So if somebody, for whatever reason, has taken umbrage with the type of treatment that you provided or what you've said to them or whatever, they can go to Yelp or Google or any other number of other review sites, and they can post a review on there, and that can directly influence your patients and your potential to acquire patients. And so it's very important to be proactive about how you're actually managing those reviews and the type of work that you're doing to market your practice, so that if there are any bad reviews, you can hopefully get them off the sites and out of the way. Okay. And then lastly, in terms of the challenges that are facing us, your competition is getting smarter online. Okay, the leading practices are taking steps to rank their websites in the search engines in ways that they never have before. They're using social media to build contact with consumers. They're conversion optimizing their website so they make the most of any traffic that they're getting going to it. And they're spending money on online advertising. Now, in Australia, the advertising online is due to exceed TV advertising budgets this year. So it just shows that companies generally, but even particularly in our space, are really starting to get a lot more savvy when it comes to using digital marketing. And if you don't really take that into account, then you're going to start falling behind, and you're going to find it harder to acquire patients by means other than just word of mouth. Okay. Now, interestingly, a lot of clinics have got very slow, poorly designed websites. And when I say poorly designed, I'm not referring to pretty or not. I'm talking about conversion and things like that. And most of these sites fail to rank well. So if you think about it, these sites are actually costing your clinic, your practice, tens of thousands of dollars in revenue each year. And we're going to talk more about those figures and how you're going to address that and so on as we go through this. And so on through the practice. Now, the last real aspect is that if you're marketing your practice, you can't be treating. Okay. Now, obviously, some marketing needs to be done face-to-face or through correspondence and things like that. You have to go out and you have to network with other practitioners. You have to do talks at clubs, and you have to build community relationships within your community and all that type of thing. And that can't be automated, and that really needs to be done. But it's not the whole picture. And to make your marketing cost effective, you really want it to be as automated as possible, so that you're not spending time actually doing too much of that face-to-face marketing, because it costs you a lot every time you take time out of the practice. You know, roughly you're charging $50 a patient and you see 4 patients an hour, that's $200 an hour. And if you have to take 3 hours out of your practice to go and to drive half an hour, do a talk, chat to people afterwards, drive half an hour back to your practice, it's effectively cost you $600 to go and do that talk. Okay, and so you need to sort of be aware of that it's not always that cost effective to be doing face-to-face marketing. Even though it might not cost you anything up front, you need to think about the time aspects and so on as well. Okay. So what we're going to just do now is quickly just give you an overview of the steps that are involved in automating your marketing. And this is really how I went through building my practice. Now, I've just talked about face-to-face marketing. I was never a big one for spending too much time doing that. And I really wanted to market my practice on autopilot as much as possible, so that I didn't have to be going out and chatting too much to other practitioners and doing talks and so forth, because I'm based in a city, and so the community aspect is less of an issue. And so, you know, while you can obviously build your practice very well through networking with sports clubs and things like that, it's just something that never really appealed to me that much. So really the way I built things is through this automated methods. And so that's what I'm going to outline with you now. Now, the first step is that you really have to define your niche or niches. Niche. So in North America, you guys pronounce it niche, we pronounce it niche. So as I refer to niche, I'm talking about your niche. So you want to define this niche in practice. So you want to be looking at, you know, what particular groups you're going to be going after. You then need to make sure that your marketing platform is ready, so that once you start targeting those people, you have the ability to receive them and to deliver your marketing message effectively. You then need to make sure that you get an audience, so that you actually have people coming to the platform in order to be able to deliver your message. You need to then actually deliver that message when they get there. So you've got to educate that audience about the types of services that you provide. You then need to convert them to patients. Okay, and that's a different aspect to just actually getting your marketing message there. And then lastly, once you have them, you need to be retaining them, obviously. So all of these steps are very important, and it's easy to miss some of the steps as you're going about producing your marketing. So just make sure that as we go through that you're sort of cross-referencing this about, am I doing this at the minute or not, and how could I improve it, and so on and so forth. So the first step is, as we said, defining your niche. Now, a lot of practitioners, they have a bit of an they have an adverse reaction to defining themselves into a certain type of condition that they're going to treat. And so what we're talking about is saying, well, what I'm going to do is with my marketing, I'm going to go after vestibular disorders. So I'm going to define that I want to look at people who want vertigo and dizziness treatment, for example. Okay, or I'm going to go for concussion injuries as a result of football, or ice hockey, or any number of different aspects of different areas of practice that you could be looking at, whether it be behavioural disorders or whatever. And sometimes, perhaps less so for us with the more specialised training that we've done, but there can be a real want to sort of be a generalist practitioner. And you have to really overcome that when you're talking about your marketing, because it becomes very hard to reach a general audience. Whereas if you just go after specific groups, it becomes very easy to become targeted with them. And it's a real tremendous advantage online to be working with a specific group of people that you want to go after. And the real key with this is that if you do feel that reaction that I don't want to define myself in just doing vertigo and dizziness, you don't have to. You can define a niche of vertigo and dizziness, and you can define a niche of behavioural disorders in kids, and you can define a niche of TBI in football players or whatever, and develop a whole marketing package around each of those, which will mean that your marketing generally will be so much more effective. And you can then start adding more and more niches and more groups that you're going to go after, but you just do it in a very targeted way. But to start with, I'd recommend just starting out with one or two so that you don't spread yourself too thin. And as you start building momentum with your marketing, you can then start to diversify. So getting that niche down pat is really the basic, the essential thing that you need to do to begin with. And then once you have that, you then build an avatar around that. And so by building an avatar, we talk about defining the exact person that you will be speaking to. So if it was behavioural disorders in kids, most of the time the avatar that you're going to want to address is the mum. Okay, and so you're going to want to target mums who are perhaps in a particular age bracket, whose kids are attending a certain school or certain type of school, particular income bracket that you might want to go after, the type of clothes they wear, the car they drive, all these types of things will just enable you to really define the person that you're talking to. And then you can craft your message very specifically to that person. And so as a consequence, you can be sure that you're going to be able to deliver a very clear and concise message to that person that is going to appeal to them. Okay. The thing that you then need to do is when you're defining your message, you start talking about benefits, not features. So in marketing, there's this real tendency for people to talk about features. You see this in a lot of software products, for example. I'll just use that because it's nice and easy to sort of describe, where they talk about, well, it does this, will track time here, and it will enable you to do billing here, and it will do, et cetera, et cetera. It defines all these features of the software. But what you then need to do is you then need to take it an extra step and say, and what this will do for you, as in if say the software was enabling you to do a particular thing, but it was saving you lots of time, for you that would be the benefit. And so for your patients, what you want to do is you want to say, you could talk about the features of your treatment, as in it's natural and it's avoids the use of drugs and surgery, and it's going to help treat this condition. But what that will mean is that little Johnny will be able to focus better in school, and he's going to be able to get better marks, and he's going to be able to do this. So you want to talk about the benefits that are applicable to the patient, as well as the features. You need to talk about some of the features, but make sure that you include some of the benefits in there as well. And so once you then have your marketing message, it's talking about benefits, you know the person that you're targeting your marketing to, then it becomes much more easy to actually deliver that message. The next thing you really need to make sure that you get right is that you need to make sure that you get your website right. Okay, now in digital marketing, your website forms the backbone of that marketing platform. Okay, now some recent surveys amongst chiropractors in the US were showing that the best way to market your practice is obviously word of mouth. And then the next best method of marketing yourself is using your website and digital marketing online. So while we're going to talk about word of mouth later on when we talk about patient retention and encouraging referrals and so on, we're going to focus mainly on the digital aspect to begin with, and your website is absolutely essential for that. And if you don't have a fast website that loads quickly, then you're going to compromise the ability to convert. One of the interesting things that they've found is that even if your website takes longer than 3 seconds to load, then you're going to actually dramatically reduce the conversions that you get from that website. So speed of website is very important. The other aspect is that you want good design to that website. So when I say design, I don't necessarily mean pretty design, though you want it to look attractive, but you really want it to be absolutely the best it can be in terms of the conversion optimization of that website. And there are certain characteristics that a good website has that enables you to increase the conversions and increase the ability for you to deliver the message that you want to deliver. So this just gives you a bit of an idea about what I usually put forward as being a good website for your practice. Now, on the left-hand side there, we have what we call the desktop version, or just a normal version of the website. You can see at the top that there's a space to put your logo. Obviously, they need to know where they've come to. Then you want to have a telephone number. At the top there, we have slightly different number formats to you guys, but that's why it looks a little bit different, but the principles are the same. People don't want to be hunting through your website in order to find your telephone number to ring you up. Okay, make it nice and visible at the top so that they can just call you. Okay. You then want to have a very easy navigation at the top there, and then you want what we call a benefit-orientated headline at the top. So this is what I was talking about before with benefits. You know, what can you do to the patient? Fast, holistic relief for XYZ condition. You know, we treat sports injuries, we treat concussion, we treat vertigo and dizziness, etc. Then you want a call to action. You've got to direct people to tell them what to do on your website. So you want to be sort of talking about booking appointments now, click here to book an appointment online, etc. And then you start talking about the therapies that you provide or the types of conditions that you can treat in more detail, some information about your practice, further calls to action, and so on and so forth. On the other side there, you see on the right-hand side, this is what we have as a mobile version of a website. Now, if you don't have a mobile responsive version, what will happen is that your normal website will show up on a mobile phone and patients will find it really hard to navigate. It gets very fiddly and so on and so forth. So you need to make sure that you have a mobile responsive version that displays well on a mobile phone, and you want things like call buttons and email us buttons and find us buttons on the top so that people can very quickly navigate and go to the different areas and call you and so forth. So if this platform isn't right, then you're going to be compromising your marketing efforts before you even start. So building a good, fast, conversion optimized website is the next step in marketing your practice and building that functional neurology practice that you're after. The next thing is you've got to build your audience. Okay, you have to give people exposure to your marketing. Okay, if you've got a beautiful ad and nobody sees it, it's useless. Okay, it's not going to deliver any results for you and your practice. You have to make sure that you're getting, in this case, traffic to your website so that you can actually be getting them to therefore then convert into patients. Similarly, with your marketing, if it just comes to advertising in your local newspaper, you want to make sure that that newspaper is going to actually deliver the information to the relevant people. If you're after sports clubs and the only people that read the newspaper is old age pensioners, retirees, then you're advertising in the wrong paper. So you have to make sure that people get exposure to your marketing. You also need that to be targeted traffic and exposure. Okay. And so similarly with what I just said with the newspaper, in that if you target somebody who is not your right group, then you're wasting your money. You need to be making sure that you're getting to that niche that we talked about earlier. And this is the real beauty of the internet, is that you can do targeted exposure to people. And for us as functional neurology practitioners, this is really the crux of it, is that if you can work out who you want to put your message to and get it delivered exactly to them, you can build a successful functional neurology practice. Okay, you just have to get yourself in front of people so that they know what you are talking about and what you can help them with. Okay, and this is the other thing about online, is there's dozens of ways to get people to come to your website to enable them to hear your message. Okay, now some of them are, you can be getting good organic search results in Google and Bing. Okay, and by that I mean your website shows up as number 1 or number 2 when somebody Googles vertigo treatment, for example. Okay, you can use Google AdWords, which are the paid ads on Google. This is really, because when I started my practice, there was no Facebook ads to speak of, or there were, but they didn't work particularly well. Google AdWords was one of the key ways that I built my practice, and it just can work a real treat. It's becoming more competitive than it was, so it's really, you want to try and get in there now before it gets even more competitive. But it can be amazing the results that you get from some of those. You can do things to do with social media. So you can do Facebook posting. You can be putting regular updates on your Facebook page and boosting those posts. You can be using Facebook ads to drive people to what we call lead capture forms or to inquiry forms, or all sorts of different things as well. Facebook ads have really come of age in the last sort of 6 to 12 months. Their effectiveness is increasing dramatically, and Facebook is just insane in how targeted you can get it. You can be targeting specific people, specific genders, age groups, income brackets, whether they've bought a new car or not, all sorts of insane things like that. You can be so niche with your audience. So, there's huge possibilities with those as well. I could rabbit on for hours about them. There's things such as question and answer sites. In Australia, we have a thing called HealthShare. There's other question and answer sites in the States on various problems. So somebody might be talking about, how do I get rid of the vertigo that I've got? And so you can set up a thing called Google Alerts, which will send you an email when there's a new posting about vertigo online, and so you then know that, okay, I can go and answer this question, and that becomes a potential referral source because you start to become the authority online and so on. Similarly with forums online, there's vertigo and dizziness forums. I'm sure there's concussion forums, etc. I mainly focused on vestibular disorders in my practice, so that's why I'll talk about that so much. But there's all sorts of forums out there where you can be online answering questions. You can do Bing ads, so Microsoft search engine, they have ads as well. You can use Twitter. A lot of people are using that effectively. I never really got into that, but that's another traffic source. LinkedIn can be another traffic source. If you're networking with clubs and schools and businesses and so on, it can work a treat. You can be producing videos about the type of services that you treat and posting those online. There's other video sites apart from YouTube that you can use. There's other social media channels like Reddit and MySpace and all these other things. You can also be using press releases. So press releases are another way of doing building links both online and offline. And lastly, you can build email lists and so on. Excuse me, just have a bit of a drink, getting a bit croaky there. And this isn't the entirety of the audience aspects that you can build online. This is just some of the stuff. So there's a whole host of ways, and these are probably the more effective ones, but there's tons of ways that you can actually get people to your website, therefore to your message, and therefore potentially into your practice as a patient. Okay, so don't limit yourself is what I'd say. Okay, the next aspect is that you really then want to develop a list of people that you can market to. So these are people that express a desire to hear about what you've got to say. So you want to be actually attracting people, collecting email addresses and things like that. You could be building reports online and making those available if people subscribe to your email list and so on. Now, there's been a lot of people who do that in a very spammy, unethical way, and I'm not talking about doing that. I'm talking about providing high quality information to people, and they then subscribe to your list, and you can then potentially market to them and tell them about your services and so on. And also, don't forget your existing patients. They are potential people that you can reactivate and so on as well. Okay. Now, what do you do when you've actually got people to your website? A lot of the time, unfortunately, we are starting on the back foot as practitioners. There is, within society, unfortunately, a lot of negative press about chiropractors and even functional neurology. A lot of people don't understand what we do, how we do it, and so on. And so we're really starting on the back foot. We have to overcome a lot of hurdles before we can actually be perceived as the authority. So therefore, you really need to make sure that you have higher standards. So you have good quality material on your site's good, is loading fast, looks professional, etc. And then you need to make sure that you automate your message as much as possible. So some of the stuff we talked about before, going and posting on forum sites and so on, is useful, but it's very time consuming. So you need to make sure that you have stuff that is automated on your website. So things like, obviously, you make sure you have good quality text on there about services that you provide and so on. You can be doing things like videos. So you have like face to camera videos if you wanted. You could be doing slideshow videos, much like I'm doing to you now, and things like that. And all these things can educate your patients or potential patients and hopefully convert them. You can do audio. One of the things I used to do was as I said, I didn't do a lot of it, but I did used to do some talks to local groups. I would record that talk and I would then convert it into an audio recording, which I've made available to patients and available on my website. And those had some really good downloads and had some very good results. And if you're doing the talk anyway, it's just like you're repurposing the content and repurposing the material that you have so that you're getting maximum mileage out of the time that you're spending if you are having to do things like face-to-face marketing and so on. And all of this is about positioning you as the expert. And so the more of this high quality stuff of yours that they read, the more they'll understand A, how much you know, and B, that you're ethical and that you're good quality and you're going to do the right thing by them as patients. You then need to make sure that your website is right to do conversion elements, the conversion aspect. So you have to have these conversion elements and calls to action on the website. So like we talked about before, you have to make sure that you have good benefit-orientated headlines, because 80% of people are going to read the headline and only 20% will read the text. So you need to make sure, if you haven't got a good headline, that is the 20%, you need to make sure you've got those conversion elements, calls to action and so on the page. Most websites are missing these, and if you don't have these conversion elements, then you're going to dramatically reduce the effectiveness of your marketing. Okay. Then lastly, you need to make sure that you retain your patients within your clinic. Now, most of us as chiropractors are familiar with inpatient clinic education. Okay, and I have to say, as a profession, I really think we do this the best amongst all the professions out there. And we just need to apply this stuff to functional neurology as well. Okay, you need to make sure that your retention is good, because you don't want all these people coming in through the top of your sales funnel to end up becoming patients and then they just drop out the back and you're delivering 100 new patients a month, and only 10 of them stay for any length of time. That's just wasteful. So you've really got to make sure that you get your in-clinic patient retention up to scratch. You can expand and automate this using digital marketing as well. Okay, so you can be doing things like email new patient sequences, sorry, it's a bit of a typo there, but just ignore that. Where you have a new patient that comes in, and then you drip feed some information to them over the subsequent weeks to months, where you talk about the aspects of care within the practice, the type of things that you're providing, etc. You can be sending out newsletters to your patients. You can very easily tie that in with SEO and content marketing to try and get your website ranking better as well at the same time. So you can be putting stuff on your blog, on your website, that then gets fed out to your patients as a newsletter, and so you kind of kill two birds with one stone. But the real idea behind this is to educate your patients even further, to encourage referrals, and to build retention within your practice, because it's just vital. If you're not doing that, then you're going to struggle. The other aspect is that you can be doing things such as building marketing calendars. So you could be sit down and work out, well, we know that the Super Bowl is on this month, for example, and I'm going to talk about how concussion is very common after football injuries. And if you link these aspects in with national and local events, and you work out the types of messages that you're going to be delivering over the year that are going to coincide with those events, it becomes much easier to get pick up within local media, and you start to become the expert. If you're talking about concussion and how important it is around the time of Super Bowl, then you might find that a local newspaper is willing to run a little article on that, because it's going to tie in well and it's going to interest the readers and things like that. Okay. You can then also be running special offers. So you might say, well, okay, we're doing concussion this month. If you've had a concussion, come in and we'll do you might run like an information evening or something like that. Come to our information evening if you've had concussion. And you could be marketing that to your existing patients, both active and inactive, and also to the other lists that you've built up of people that have expressed an interest in the type of services that you provide. Okay, and that marketing calendar can work very well. And like we said, you can tie that in with the local media, offer unique perspectives, and therefore you're more likely to get picked up by those news agencies. How potentially can this work within your clinic? The financial benefits can be enormous. Okay, if we take an average patient, say a patient comes to you for 10 sessions over their lifetime before they drop out of care. Now, hopefully it's more than that, but we'll just run with 10 for the sake of simple arithmetic. And on average, they might pay, say, $70 a session, for example. That would mean that a patient is worth $700 in revenue to your practice. Okay, so once you have that information, then it becomes very easy to work out how much you can spend on your marketing and the benefits that you're potentially going to get from getting your marketing right. Now, if you're not sure with how to work out that 10 sessions over the lifetime, that being what's called your patient visit average, you just take your total visits over a period of time, say if it's 3 months, and then you divide those total visits by the number of new patients that you've got, and that will give you your patient visit average. Okay, so say our new patient's worth $700 in revenue to our practice on average. We can then sort of work out that if we put in place systems to generate more new patients and retain the existing ones, we could work out that, say, if we generated 4 new patients a month at $700, that's $2,800 more in revenue into your practice each month. And if we, say, took that figure and times it by 12, then we're going to obviously work out that that's going to give you a figure of almost $34,000 a year in extra revenue into your practice, just from getting an extra 8 new patients a year. Okay. If we then took that even further and double it, you can see that the numbers start to add up very quickly. Okay, and you start to get some very good revenue within your practice. Now, this is also not actually taking into account the fact that if you were to increase your retention as well, so if you took your retention and you took it from 10 to 15, for example, that would increase your revenue per new patient to $1,050 per new patient, which would make it over $50,000 in revenue a year for 4 new patients a month, or $100,000 in revenue a year from 8 new patients a month. So, and this doesn't include the increased visits from your existing patients as well. It just takes into account your new patients. And so you can really see that the numbers add up very quickly. And we're not talking about over-servicing people here. I'm not talking about manipulating them, excuse the pun, into coming into more than they actually need it. But you want to make sure that patients are obviously getting the care that they actually need. And I'm sure that most people are carrying some sort of injury or some sort of condition that you could help them with. And so we're talking about helping those people at a deeper level than perhaps what you are able to do now. And the other aspect to consider is, what is it costing you in your practice not to implement a system? Okay, if you can make $100,000 extra a year from seeing 8 additional new patients a month, it's costing you $100,000 a year if you don't implement the system. Okay, so it might cost you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year to implement a comprehensive digital marketing setup. But if it's costing you $40,000 and you're making $200,000 a year from that system, then it's a bit of a no-brainer. Okay, and if you don't have to do the work involved with it, then it becomes even more relevant. And so you can see that very quickly these things can make a difference. So the steps that you want to go through, just to reinforce them again and go back over them, these are the steps that I use to build my practice, and you see it with other people out there as well using the same methods to build theirs. You want to, first of all, define your niche and all the aspects that are associated with doing that. You want to prepare your platform, make sure that it's up to scratch. You need to make sure that you then get an audience to that platform so that you can deliver your marketing. You then educate them when they get there, i.e. deliver the message to that audience. You want to make sure that you're able to convert them into patients. And then last of all, you need to make sure that you're retaining people within the practice, because otherwise, like I say, you're just wasting your money in terms of getting people in there in the first place. So in summary, you need to prepare and to face the challenges that are presently here for your practice, and the challenges that are going to arrive and get even worse for your practice in the future, with your competition getting more internet savvy and more focused in their marketing. The number of people doing this type of work is increasing. Whether they do it as well as us, it's hard to say, but you know, they're out there and they're putting their message forward. And if you're not putting your message forward, you're going to get drowned within the din. Okay. It really is this simple. These steps that I've outlined in the systems today, that is all you need to do in order to develop a good marketing system that's going to deliver you the new patients. You have to work on, obviously, the ability to deliver the services well within your practice. Obviously, I can't help you with that here. But it really is this simple to actually get a good marketing system in place and start the promotion of your practice. The real key to it is that you've got to apply it. It's no point just coming along to this webinar today, listening to what I've got to say and say, oh, that was interesting, and then go away and never do anything with it. You've got to apply it, and you've got to do it consistently. There's no point just doing a bit of Google AdWords for a month and then turning it off. It doesn't work that way. You've got to do things on a consistent basis. And if you can do that, then you will do well with it. Okay. Now, the notes for today you can find at this address here. I haven't put them up yet because we haven't finalized the video and everything like that. So they will be available either later today or tomorrow for you guys. So just give me a little bit of time to process the video and get all the stuff up on the website. But if you just go to clear.re/FN notes, don't put www at the start because it won't work. Okay, you have to leave it off because it's a URL shortener that'll redirect you to the full link, which is much longer, and I didn't want to have you scribbling it down. So, but they will be available, and I'll send you out an email when they're available so that you can go and check them out. Okay. Now, if you remember at the start, I talked about getting help with this material. This really can be very daunting, putting this together, and it's not really cost effective for you to do it yourself. If you think that maybe, like we said earlier, say if you were seeing 4 patients an hour at $50 a visit or whatever, it's going to cost you $200 an hour to be spending time doing it. This type of stuff, it's really not cost effective for you to be doing it. We provide cost-effective, comprehensive practice marketing solutions. Okay, I'd like to offer you all a free checkup of your practices marketing, and we're going to look at where the opportunities exist for you within the market, and where you're currently at, and so on and so forth. So we'll also sort of assess whether or not we'd be able to help you and so on. So, we're not going to try and sell you something that isn't appropriate for you and that isn't going to benefit your practice and so on and so forth. So if you'd like to take advantage of this service, just pop along again to the same, we've got the same URL shortener there. It's clear.re/SFS, short for strategic focus session. So clear.re/SFS. Should have made that a bit easier, shouldn't I? And pop your details in there, and we'll get in touch and we'll see about arranging a time to run through your marketing, see where you're currently at, and so on and so forth. So hopefully you found that interesting today. I'd just like to throw this open now to for any questions that people might have.